How are you able to anchor your customers so that they don't lose out to someone that can quickly create a new website or quickly create content?
A lot of it has to do with the brand authority now. One thing that we know about Google is it prioritizes older websites. So if you have a client with an older website, you have a better chance to rank with it. Another part is putting in the hard work, putting top quality content instead of the less effort content that are being created with like the fast created new websites. And it will be much harder for them to pass you.
It comes down to, brand quality. It all depends on, again, I kind of go back to the industry or the level of competition, if you want to say it that way. If the competition is high, you need more branding and more quality on that end to compete. The competition is low, then the quality and the branding can be less.
Currently doing an experiment with Claude Code, looking at the first page, buying keyword-specific domains, and then having it run for 30 minutes and make a full website, and then show up number 1 to 3 within a local market. And it can work, especially in the lower competition stuff. Just because lower competition in Google doesn't mean that it's low value.
Welcome to an episode of SEO on Air. I'm your host, Koa. This episode is brought to you by Stan Ventures. Today, we have 3 great guests on with us. We have Carl Holden from Zealous Marketing. He also has started another company that does some AI backlinking. So he's kind of an entrepreneur. He's done quite a few things in his career. One of them was also a gaming studio, I think, for young game developers. Carl, excited to have you on. Jesse, the founder of Spearpoint Marketing, an agency that's steadily been growing year after year and has also evolved his agency into coaching and consulting for other agencies. So we're excited to have your experience on with us today, Jesse. And Edmond, head of SEO strategy at Tactica, where he leads a large SEO operation team. They're reshaping the workflows to match AI overviews and the changes that are coming into SEO, and he leads a new generation of fulfillment teams. We're excited to have you here as well, Edmond. Thank you for joining us. Guys, today I wanted to just have a discussion really about the future of SEO and how teams and humans are a part of that. To start, I actually am going to open it up with something that I've never used on this podcast before because I know it's pretty used throughout the industry. But there's a question of SEO being dead that's brought up regularly. Jesse's probably talked about this a few times. I'm sure all of you have mentioned this to your customers when questions come up. I don't necessarily want to ask you if SEO is dead, but there's parts of it that are dying and parts of it that are evolving. So I want you guys to share your perspectives on the parts of SEO that are changing the most right now and why that conversation is so hot in the industry.
I'll start in that I think what is dying that people are noticing is the certain types of traffic you used to get, answering a specific question, and instead of someone looking at a site and getting that question answered, we have things like AI overviews or ChatGPT or Claude that you can get that answer. One could argue too, though, if somebody's got a question, half the times they just literally wanted the question answered and weren't looking to do business. So I do think there is the opportunity to focus more on answering the questions that actually lead to business, rather than just the broad swath of become a dictionary or Wikipedia on the internet. That opportunity is now gone and or diminishing depending on the whims of these large tech companies and what they decide and who they decide gets to answer questions of certain type.
Yeah, I think I can just to add to that, really, it's pretty much a bit of a split between informational and transactional type of searches. In a way, those informational websites that pretty much used to get a lot of traffic because they were answering a lot of different questions aren't necessarily going to win as much anymore, because now a lot of the answers are just going to be on an AI overview, or somebody's going to use ChatGPT instead of even using Google at all, and they're going to get the answers that they're looking for. So really now SEO basis is going to be more focused on selling point. If you want to convert to traffic, you're going to have a website that's going to be selling something, and that's pretty much where the focus of SEO should be moving forward.
Yeah, that's spot on. I think from both comments from Carl and Edmond, that that's where the industry is going, and I do like the idea of splitting, the search intent between informational and then a transactional. And so I think any of us would see like, I mean, I do proposals all the time, and especially like bigger websites that have been established and have like a lot of content, specifically a lot of blog content. You definitely see a rise in traffic, or you could maybe see their traffic was really high in February and March, and then you can see this kind of scale down for the rest of the year. And that's an obvious impact of the rise of LLMs specifically, and other ways to find answers to these questions. And so a lot of this too, when you're thinking about informational content that's maybe dying, it's not really it's dying, it's just changing. So there's more reasons to blog. I think traditionally the way a lot of companies have used SEO is like, oh, I can get low-hanging fruit keywords by writing about anything on a blog post. And that would work. That would look really good on Google Analytics, or maybe in Google Search Console, when you could see the rise of just traffic to a website. Now, especially with my agency, we don't really care about the amount of traffic to a website. We're kind of defining that of like, hey, this is the amount of traffic that you're getting to your high intent pages, your service pages, your home pages that actually provide value. And we segment that between that and your informational content. So our customers know that they're getting the impact on not just total traffic, but what the traffic that actually matters to a site. Whereas I think a lot of SEO companies, we just kind of leaned on total traffic or total organic traffic. So that's kind of I think one of the bigger changes within the SEO world, or at least SEO agencies.
I think it makes sense to those that are in the SEO field, but a lot of your customers, and Jesse, before we even went live, I think you mentioned this, they don't have as deep a view as the three of you will have on SEO. And when they see that their traffic went down, they just see red flags everywhere. How are you able to communicate to your customers? Like, how are you effectively communicating to your customers that traffic loss is not SEO dying? Because I think that's the simple view for those that don't understand the depth of SEO, is that it's dead. Traffic's not coming to my website like it used to. What do I do?
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy. So it does require more, education with in more transparency between you and your clientele, to get them to understand, like, when someone goes to a blog post, for example, they're usually searching for information, not necessarily transaction. So if you could really display your analytics, like this is the traffic that matters, and then this is the traffic that's just informational, which we've done a pretty good job in my agency of kind of segmenting those two. They can kind of grasp the understanding, but it's more of keeping them involved and showing them the traffic that matters. But the other thing too is, what's really their KPI? Is their KPI always been traffic, or is the KPI revenue? If the KPI is revenue, then why are we even talking about traffic at all? So if the KPI is revenue, then what can we show them as an agency to show that has a bigger impact towards revenue? And that could be conversions, that could be leads. If they are e-commerce, you could actually show transitions and sales. So there's other KPIs to actually lean on versus just, oh, your total traffic went down.
Yeah, despite though that revenue is mainly the goal of all clients that we have, there is that idea now that a lot of clients are getting that AI is a big deal, and it's to no fault of really just trending and social media, where there's a lot of people just pretty much putting it out there that ChatGPT AI is the big thing. And that is affecting also clients, where they start requesting that they show up in AI results. So that is also affecting us, where we have to convince or even explain to them how they're going to show up in AI results, whether they show up and is that going to be beneficial to their business, or is it just going to be, you're going to go in an AI overview result, you're going to get the result, you're not going to get a conversional traffic that is going to convert into a lead. You're going to get people that are trying to learn more about your service or anything like that.
Yeah, and I think we are working in an industry that is rife with buzzwords, where people who maybe just want to come in and say, I'm an AI expert, and you're like, hold on, I mean, I tell people I'm more expert than them, but to call yourself an expert in a thing that's really only been around for the general consumer 3 years is a little asinine, but or potentially just too much credit to give to yourself. But all the people pitching GEO and AIO and AEIOU and sometimes Y, whatever acronym they want to put, foundationally, for people to be found online, whether they're going to your traditional Google search or even these AI algorithms, underneath all of those are still the search algorithms, that if you don't rank for queries, you don't show up. The studies will show that on ChatGPT and Claude, the companies that generally show up well in normal search are the ones being quoted there. And so to help people understand that while you may not be looking at a list of 10 articles, you're almost letting a layer of somebody else go and do a Google search for you and choose the ones that they seem to think are good. So it isn't just like Jesse said about the traffic. Where can you create on your page high intent content that helps people understand that you are the good choice for what you do? Because ChatGPT is good at seeing some of those things kind of from those 10 to 20 that it pulls.
The behavior of the search is now changed a lot. I think it was interesting that you said that, Carl, because I think of the recent search that I had where I asked a few questions into Google, and then I got annoyed because it wasn't really answering my question. It was proposing websites that might answer my question. I switched over to ChatGPT and was able to get an answer within seconds. The users are going to switch over because it answers their questions, I would say, more directly, right, than Google can typically do. And I know Google's evolving their AI search too right now, so that it could transition pretty quickly. But as that's evolving, the need for fulfillment to change feels like it's there. And I want to know, do you feel like there's aspects of SEO fulfillment that are maybe undervalued right now coming into like 2026 that SEO agencies need to focus more on to appear in AI overviews? Where are you seeing opportunities for companies to optimize better?
Yeah, I think it's understanding the queries that your customers are searching for, right? And that's always something that we've been trying to do for SEO anyway. But there are more specific queries that maybe trigger more of an AI search. However, a lot of those queries might not get you cited, or not even show us a website where it's cited from. So if that's the case, then who freaking cares, right? It's not giving you any value. And so there's more, the queries that we would search for is like, what is the best this service, or was the best this service in an area? Those are the type of things. But really how you can appear that is, I think Carl hit it right on the head. Is like, the websites that have already been doing really good on search or on search engines are typically the ones that are getting featured. And the reason is not just for SEO credibility, but overall brand quality or brand equity across the internet is just a great practice, and probably always will be a good practice for any type of search, whether it's a search engine, whether it's an LLM or whatever. So the way I look at it is if you put more involvement in like brand equity and brand trust, you're going to get further. And how you do that, variety of different ways. There's backlinks, there's review sites, there's testimonials, there's case studies, user generated content. There's all types of different ways to build your brand. And thought leadership is one of those too. So social media, if you look at it that way, then you're likely to appear in any type of search, whether it's, again, Google or an LLM.
Which seems pretty common sense, right? Search everywhere optimization has been the saying that I feel like has been adopted pretty quickly for a lot of SEOs. It's moved beyond search engine optimization. It's everywhere.
Pretty much. Like what's become more important than the website is the brand. So you optimize for the brand, not necessarily for the website. Of course, SEO does its part for the website. When it comes to AI, it takes a lot of community management, building that authority. Jesse mentioned backlinks, mentions in different websites now are more important than ever. Just when those mentions that you get, like if you have a link building campaign, let's say, those mentions, you might even want to include now your brand name in those instead of just it being like a link with a keyword, because that brand name will push through with ChatGPT and other LLMs. One thing that I noticed recently that I checked with one of my clients is they get cited a lot in ChatGPT and in AI Overview, but they don't get mentioned in the answers. So when somebody is searching to get knowledge as well as get like a reference of a company for a service, that company might be getting cited, your client might be getting cited, but they're not going to see your client's name on that answer that they're getting, so they're not going to know about your client.
Really interesting. We've had someone on that ran a lot of SEO for food websites. And I was concerned that food websites were going to be one that would really get hit by AI overviews, just kind of taking a recipe and making it accessible to you. I even seen Facebook ads for that exact service where you can use their AI platform to just find recipes, translate them into something that's more functional than scrolling through a whole blog before you find the recipe. And his thought was that human written content can still outperform pretty much any AI written content. And it was almost strictly because you kind of dive into the details and really address the customer's needs at a higher level than most AI systems can get into it. And I'm thinking about how SEO, like the SEO is dead side of things, and thinking about you guys, and like you're saying SEO is still alive. We still, like, all the basics of SEO are a foundation that makes you successful today. But when I think about how a marketing agency defends that, I'm thinking about you guys and what you're probably doing for your customers. And I think it comes down to the consulting aspect of it and understanding more about what the customer is buying from your client than usually your client does. Because it sounds like you guys probably have to dive deeper into the content to make sure that the content tree you're performing aligns better with the searches. It's very much bottom of the funnel. Is that what you guys are seeing on your end?
So I would say that just the bigger opportunity to understand from SEO is that it's not generally a vein of marketing that's as exciting. So part of the opportunity too is just to be as expert in it as possible as you can be. There are a lot of people, a lot of clients who to this day, even though they have access to ChatGPT, are not going to ask ChatGPT how to do SEO. Because as soon as they start seeing some of like the work that it entails, they're like, oh, I don't know that I want to do that. I call it, SEO is the dirty jobs of marketing. It's not as fun. It's not as cool as making logos or videos or all those social media campaigns. But when it comes down to it, just like you need plumbing in your house, you need traffic to your website. And people like ourselves, being able to communicate that expertise to people and solve the issues that they need, which are traffic and revenue, tends to just be, in my opinion, a wide open opportunity as long as you know what you're doing.
Jesse, Edmond, what are you guys seeing from like a hyper relevant content perspective for fulfillment? How much are you really diving down deeper to try to make sure that you're really answering those questions that are coming from AI? We've seen it from data. Like a lot of companies are incorporating a lot more data. Even pricing, I saw, was something that was trending recently, that if you're not including pricing, you may not show up at all because they're trying to give estimates and quotes for services. What are you seeing, guys?
I think it depends on the industry. I think if you're industry specific and you actually specialize in industry, you'll know the trends of like what's valuable there. You could always look at what your competitors are doing, the ones that are appearing in LLMs or appearing on the top of Google, and see like how they're doing it. Then you have the answer right there in front of you, possibly. And so it's really understanding an industry and who the ideal customer or ideal visitor is to those sites, and then seeing what they're looking for. If they're in SaaS, they might be looking for like something like pricing. Like in software, like pricing is common, and then like I know a lot of like versus like a software versus another software is a common like query that people are searching for, and that's a really valuable one when you can show a citation. It shows the brand. It definitely can evolve into a higher intent or a query or high intent traffic to a website potentially. So I really just think it's based on the industry and what that ideal audience is looking for.
Edmond, did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with you, Cora, when you say that more hyperactive content, more pretty much being more in detail with everything that you say is becoming more important. As well as, to add to that, you also have the integration of a lot of query type platforms. I want to mention Reddit. That I've tested that. I've seen that it can work with AI, especially with ChatGPT. ChatGPT, a lot of it is being based on like Reddit results and all of that. I've tested with a local business. I haven't necessarily tested with other stuff, but with a local business, it worked quite nicely where you had community engagement in Reddit of that local business, and it would push it like it pushed it in ChatGPT. It wasn't showing up before, and it pushed it after we did quite a bit of community engagement in Reddit. Yeah.
Are all three of you using Reddit? Is there anyone that's not using Reddit?
I use it somewhat. We don't dive into it a lot. And it's not because we don't see the value there. We definitely see the value. It's more of a resource thing. It's just another thing that we have to get good at, that we know what we're good at and what we're not as good at. And so we try to stay in our lane with certain things. And then overall, like if our goal is to, we're a conversion-based SEO company, so like our customers care about conversions. Is Reddit really helping with that? And there's definitely some answers that yes, it can, but if there's more no's than yeses, then it's not something that is going to fit on our priority list, if that makes sense.
I mean, we've dabbled a bit in Reddit. I have found focusing on the ones also that ChatGPT and Claude and even Google's own Gemini tend to reference more. We've found, at least with local businesses, that hyper-optimizing their Google Maps and making their maps rank higher will actually get more references in the AI mode than many other things. I don't rank for everything in my area on the lists, but I do show up really well with the map and will still get referenced for things. And then, like with businesses, more focusing on just like what they offer to the public than trying to get some kind of artificial conversation within Reddit. You have to be careful too with Reddit because they have some pretty staunch moderators that some of which can smell people like us from a mile away. It's the effort of trying to not have the alarm bells go off in Reddit is almost not worth the headache for me, but that's just my own personal opinion.
I'm imagining a lot of natural posts have been ripped down just based off of the assumption that they might be promoting stuff, because they definitely lean on the cautious side of that. So one thing that I'm thinking about here too now is it's hard because traditional SEO is the core of AI. Like it feels like everyone that's in SEO knows that they're finally back in like the spotlight. I think there was a post recently that I saw that's like, hey, it's nice that my entire company now recognizes that I'm super valuable to them because everyone's talking about AI and it all funnels back to me. So this is great. But there's a question that I have too about like, there's some new skill I feel like coming into SEO where they don't necessarily have the traditional SEO perspective. They're viewing it strictly from an AI perspective. Can you guys tell me what the newest generation of SEOs, like what skills you're seeing from them that you think would be more valuable for traditional SEOs to adopt?
My main point would be, if anything, I'll counter it before Jesse answers it, in that I think SEO professionals like ourselves need to do themselves a favor and better understand AI, not so much worrying about the upcoming generation. That's going to be their own problem of what they figure out. I think I've found that a lot of the opportunity, which I've taken for myself, is really understanding AI as a platform and as a technology. I've taken about 200 hours of courses from LinkedIn and Google and Duke and Wharton Business School to like understand that it's not a magic box, and algorithmically how does a neural network work. And I think when anybody can come to the table with the knowledge of this not being a magical black box, but the mathematical background of how it works does themselves a huge favor by also just being able to talk to clients from a higher understanding of just what these things are and how they work. And it also helps you better understand what they are and aren't going to do in the future by understanding the principles of them. But that's not exactly the answer to the question, but I think it's important.
I like where you went with it. I have a follow-up question for you after we give Jesse and Edmond a chance to answer that.
Yeah, I think to go back to the question, I think the obvious is like if you know how to use AI as a content generation tool, like I think that's kind of like what really exploded in our industry probably first when it comes to SEO. And then not just, I mean, there's so many tools for that purpose, right? But come up with quality content and still be able to not just rely on an AI tool, I think is a valuable thing that you need to have. And the other thing too is like, accumulating research is really powerful for AI because research has always been a time consuming resource for anyone that's doing marketing. Whereas AI can give you research. However, a lot of times especially if you're using like ChatGPT or something like that, a lot of times the research is not very good. So having the ability to kind of filter out what you're actually looking for, whether it's different prompts or different tools, that's a big thing. But there's also tools that do automate a lot of the on-site work, maybe some of the off-site work. So using those, I'm not saying those tools are all great yet. We practice or we've tested a ton of them, and I think they're right now for at least of the tools that we've tested, it ends up being more work for us because we have a higher standard of quality for what we're trying to do here. But at some point, I would expect those tools to keep improving. That's just what AI does, and to have that ability to be able to manage those type of tools is really, I think, kind of like a future of like what an SEO person would kind of turn into. But still, no matter what, you got to understand the foundations of SEO, why search engines or why other, not just search engines, but LLMs, why they choose to rank sites or why they choose to cite sites. That type of knowledge is always going to be there. Otherwise, you're just going to rely on a tool expecting it's going to give you the answer or give you the results that you want.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about doing the research, writing the content, you can use AI for sure. You can use it, but you can't rely on it. So basically, I haven't been doing SEO for as long as Jesse and Carl have, but I've been doing it for over 3 years now, and I do use AI to help me with my research. I have a content team that uses AI to write the content, but it goes through massive edits and massive changes because you can't fully rely on the production that right now ChatGPT, for example, has. As Jesse mentioned, it can mess up like quite a bit. So yeah, a lot of the data needs to be, for our clients, it needs to be reliable data. So we can't rely on the AI part.
Yeah, the question I wanted to follow up with, I think you guys have actually answered pretty well, which was what role should AI play in SEO agencies today? Earlier in the year, everyone had adopted every single tool it felt like they could because they wanted to stay ahead of the game. And it felt like throughout the year, we've seen in the podcast, tools just dropping out of the toolbox and coming back to like more standard practices. I think I often compare it to like programming. And if there's someone that's written all their code using AI, they may have done something good. And they may be able to replicate it, or something broke along the way and they have no idea how to fix it and they're starting over, and the time that's just put into that is where it starts to eat away. Whether it's the profits from your side of things or the customer experience or churn on customers because they lose trust, I think that's what we're seeing. What are you guys, what are maybe areas of the tools that you've used that you felt like you needed to rein back and bring back into the marketing team to make sure that you were delivering quality over quantity? Because that's one thing I try to spotlight on the podcast is there's a lot of agencies that maybe have the cookie cutter package that they deliver. And then we're trying to avoid that. And the agencies that have incorporated tools and typically drop the tools have thought that maybe they didn't have the customization or the quality standards that they like to have for their internal fulfillment. How are you guys approaching maintaining quality while bringing AI in? So I'll simplify that question to just, where have you avoided using AI because it can't give you the quality that you want for your customers?
Well, I'll throw this out there because maybe you guys have differing opinions, but I did some experiments and even have sites that are like 95% AI generated. And AI generated content can rank. Is it content that converts? Maybe not. But you can put stuff out on the internet with prompting and reprompting and sticking it in there and having less than 10% human effort, and it can show up. But the reason that it maybe ranks for that specific thing, you can't get AI-generated content to rank for really competitive stuff. And so it just becomes like, what am I using this for and who am I trying to attract? And AI-generated content from top-level surface looks good, but then when you go down to the actual meat and bones of it, oftentimes is quite thin. And Google and these other algorithms can pick up on that. And so over-reliance on thin, generated, nice-looking content can get you in trouble. And I think there are a lot of people putting a lot of that out there and can have some results, but you obviously just can't do that because it will rank for a time, but then better content will come out that has more effort put into it. And a simple thing I'll end with is fact-checking. Even to this day, AI will say stuff that's not exactly true. It's got about as good as a human, almost, but not quite as good. But you still have to fact-check things.
I'll piggyback on AI-generated content because I think that's something that's been around for long enough where I think it was one of the first tools that most of us SEO people were using like 2 years ago. And we were using it in a matter of convenience of like, oh my gosh, I can designate less resources to creating content because that's always been kind of a tough thing to fulfill. And not just for an SEO agency, but also for any type of business that knows like, oh my gosh, we got to create blogging content from scratch. So AI was like a really quick solution for that. But what happened was as more users were using it, the more low quality content was being published. And yeah, that stuff can get ranked and cited or whatever. But when you get more and more volume, you have to lean towards quality. So I think the way we've shifted is, one, we don't ever rely on one tool. We have a variety of different AI content generation tools that we use for different type of customers, depending on the industry. We just know that certain tools are better at providing more research and information versus other tools. So that's how we split it out. And then we kind of went from like maybe, 90%, 90% AI content, 10% editing, then it turned to 80-20, and now it's probably more like 50-50, right? And so it's like, it just turned from a convenience tool to a tool of like, okay, how can we create the best quality tool? So volume and convenience is not a reason why we use AI generated content anymore.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Jesse about the part where it kind of evolved from a 90-10% to a 50-50 now, basically. But also I'm going to agree with Carl. Yes, you can use AI. You can create websites fully with AI, and it does come down to how much competition it is. If it's a low competition website, it will rank even with AI. Higher competition websites, you will have to have more effort on it. And I've noticed a lot of agencies, a mistake that has been made by a lot of agencies is letting go of staff to replace them with AI tools, and that has not helped at all. They have pretty much failed in that aspect. Like, you could have used AI to some point, but you definitely need the human touch.
I think that's interesting with the AI content. We've seen that trend as well. People dropped off. They definitely laid off a lot of content writers. And then they realized most of them needed a little bit of a content or an editor or someone to make sure that the quality was actually there. It has reduced headcount, I think, and reduced the cost of it. So that 50-50 seems accurate. But then there's a matter of, even when you have a human writer now, you don't want a human writer to not use AI tools to make themselves more efficient, right? So there's definitely like the research aspect and everything. I think we've seen that find like a happy middle ground now, where it really was polar for a while. And Carl, to your point, like getting a website ranking, we've had guests on here that swear by AI content being the only way to go about it. And it's interesting because I can't say they're wrong. And just like Jesse mentioned too, AI is getting better and better and better. So if they're fully adopted on it now, as it gets better, it'll be interesting to see how they evolve with the industry as they've adopted tools more aggressively.
Oh, I've been currently doing an experiment with Claude Code, looking at the first page, buying keyword-specific domains, and then having it run for 30 minutes and make a full website, and then show up number 1 to 3 within a local market. And it can work. Especially in the lower competition stuff. Just because it's lower competition in Google doesn't mean that it's low value. It's just in certain industries like pressure washing or foundation repair in certain cities, they're just not very active in SEO. And so you can make pretty good wins with relatively low effort, and then run it up, get it ranking, and then put the rest of the effort on top and just conquer pages. I mean, I've got almost 20 sites now that talk about marketing that show up in almost every city in my state. So I've been spinning up a small content army of sites that drive traffic throughout, 100, 200-mile radius for us.
I saw that trend for a while at one of my last jobs where we set up agencies. A lot of companies were trying to create local pages, local service pages, so they could generate leads and sell those leads or opportunities to contractors and things like that. It seems like a lot of agencies today would be trying to combat that by getting their customers so well established that they maybe don't just dethrone them so quickly. And that might be one of the last questions I think we have time for. But I do want to ask this, with content being so easy to generate now, where you're creating websites so quickly, the competition feels like it's like that high tide raises all ships. Everything's getting more competitive. It's getting more expensive. How are you able to anchor your customers so that they don't lose out to someone that can quickly create a new website or quickly create content? How are you guys generating that authority for your sites, for your customers, to establish their credibility?
So yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the brand authority now. One thing that we know about Google is it prioritizes older websites. So if you have a client with an older website, you have a better chance to rank with it. Another part is putting in the hard work, putting top quality content instead of the less effort content that are being created with like the fast created new websites. And it will be much harder for them to pass you. Still not impossible, so you still have to do a lot of things, but a lot of it also now includes the brand optimization. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the answer. It comes down to brand quality, but it all depends on, again, I kind of go back to the industry or the level of competition, if you want to say it that way. If the level of competition is low, then there's less content that you got to compete with. Obviously AI generated content can definitely work there really, really well, right? But if the competition is high, then you got to have some brand equity. There's more work involved. So I'll give you a quick example. Like I have a proposal right now that I'm trying to land. It's 3 websites, and I won't tell you what industry you're in, but they have a city page for I think each website has like 6 or 7 states. They have a city page for literally every city in that state. And we're talking about thousands and thousands of pages here. And so I'm kind of stuck of like, okay, do I want to prune these out? How I'm going to deal with all this content, because there's so much to deal with. But I was really shocked to see, like, when you do that approach, you can still get a lot of traffic to your site, because if you're going for every city in a state, maybe you're not going to rank for the top 10 biggest cities, depending on how populated the state is. But you could definitely rank for 100 or 200 other small towns, and maybe get a handful of clicks from each town, and that really adds up. And so it really depends on just the level of competition. If the competition is high, you need more branding and more quality on that end to compete. The competition is low, then the quality and the branding can be less. So it just really depends.
It's interesting. You guys both go into like kind of a content standpoint. Jesse, you talk about the number of pages, but those both seem like things that might be fairly easy to replicate. Just copying a website and saying, hey, this is a great website, build me one like this. Or if they have 1,000 pages, they could build out those pages pretty fast with an AI tool and potentially compete with you pretty directly. So it's a tough question because I'm asking you to kind of predict the future of AI, but it's really, what do you think the markers are that kind of just, I mean, age of a website is an interesting one to talk about that being a differentiator. What else do you guys see that might be uniquely differentiating websites to be more authoritative at this point?
Well, so I like to tell people, feed the beast. Do what Google wants. And oftentimes people will look at the first page and they'll see, well, what's showing up at the top? You can learn almost as much by going down to page 3 or 4 and see what's not showing up. And if you inverse it and you look at the data of what's not working and avoid that, that's almost as valuable as the stuff that's on the first page.
Do you think, I'm going to ask you a tough question. Do you have an example of something that you saw wasn't working that you could share with us?
You could just see like pieces of content that even though it looked like a lot of effort was put into it, if a page is 3 or 4 down and they went off on some FAQ of a type of product and then it doesn't show up for that thing even though they put a lot of effort in, you can quantifiably start to see if several of them do that and none of them are ranking. And then instead of an FAQ, you see just the ones showing up for this specific product might have more like emphasis on the gallery, and Google thinks people want to see more photos. You can learn the stuff you shouldn't do just as much as the stuff you should.
I think of how many customers knew exactly or how many of your clients knew exactly what their customers wanted, and they wanted it delivered that way, and then they showed up on page 3, and you had to explain to them.
I tell people you got to pay just as much attention to what Google wants, though. We are in this weird business where we have to serve 2 customers, both Google and the customers. Because it doesn't matter really, technically, in my opinion, just what the customer wants. Google's going to rank what Google decides to rank. And they may talk all the time and we'll give them all this credit that they're this super smart company that's got everything figured out. And they don't. They follow patterns. And so if you look and find the patterns and follow those patterns, but do it better than others and avoid detriments of what's pattern-wise not working in their system, you can rank higher. So making sure you understand Google is your customer too.
Edmond, you're shaking your head. You agree?
Yeah, I agree with that. It is a lot about it. It's algorithms. It's Google algorithms. You have to follow Google algorithms if you want to rank. It is a challenge with a lot of the clients that you have because a lot of them have their mindset in specific things and they want things to look a certain way, be a certain way. But it does come down to then educating the client and convincing them to, okay, we're going to try your way, but it's not going to work. So let me try my way first, and then let's see.
Okay, there was go ahead, Jesse.
Oh, yeah, I don't really have much to add. I mean, I think an example could be like, page authority or domain trust, domain authority, right? Like what client really cares about generating backlinks or quality backlinks. What does a quality backlink even mean to your customer as a business owner? Why the heck would they care, right? But we know that that's an important thing, not just for Google, but other ways to search, whether it's an AI tool or an LLM. So, I think it's just having that. If you want to summarize it all, it's just that brand trust, that brand authority. To me, is like what impacts on the future of being of appearing in any type of way you search online.
I think that's the next question for the next podcast I'll have to ask is define brand trust. It sounds like one of those buzzwords that there's so much to that would be hard to dive into. We may have to save it for the next podcast because of the time too. We may save it for you. I actually may follow up with you guys on LinkedIn. I'll tag you and make sure that the three of you can connect. And I'll follow up with what I think of some buzzword questions that are kind of around the industry, around content creation, that I think would be fascinating for your engagement. I'll ask you maybe to comment and share your thoughts on the question. We can take the time and wrap this up today. So Jesse, Edmond, Carl, I appreciate all of you guys being on this episode of SEO on Air. We appreciate your time and thanks for being here.